All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of the Housing Information Series. This week, we're talking about buying and selling. And today I have Lorraine and Brandon O'Quinn from Royal LePage here with us to discuss that topic. So thank you guys both for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Can you both tell us a little bit about yourselves and your affiliation with the military?
Yeah, do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Yes, so I'm Lorraine Quinn, and I've been in real estate for 23 years. We are the O'Quinn team. I had my wonderful son Brandon, my other son Ryan, my husband Tom, 4 family members.
Yeah.
We have several other agents, Jamie, Sue, Heather, and a couple on license.
Okay.
Most of us with military affiliation, and we're really big and involved in the community and giving back.
Yeah.
And doing lots of fundraising, and real estate is our passion. So here we are. We're happy to be of service.
Yeah.
I'm Brandon. I was a base brat and got posted to Trenton from Ottawa when I was 3 years old, and grew up around real estate since I was kind of this tall, and played competitive hockey junior in Trenton, got traded to Kingston, went to the States, played NCAA for a bit, finished up at Brock University playing hockey, and after that got into real estate, joined the family business, and this is now my 4th year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I didn't know that you played hockey. Cool. Well, I knew you played hockey. I just didn't know that you were that involved. That's awesome. Okay, so since the majority of the audience that's probably watching is actually currently posted to Trenton, I kind of want to start off with selling first, because people are going to be getting their posting messages soon, getting prepared to sell. So as we approach APS 2023, can you tell us about how people can go about getting their house ready to list?
Yeah.
What are some tips?
Do you want me to start with that? You can add to.
Okay.
So basically now when you find out you're being posted, it's a really good idea to get your agent that you're going to be working with in to get you prepared.
Okay.
And being prepared is going to make sure your house is showing its best.
Yeah.
And you're organized. I like to make sure we are getting gas costs, hydro costs, electrical, water costs if you're on municipal services. Go through the house and mention things like decluttering, maybe paint. Paint goes a long way.
Yeah.
Now, you sort of should be looking at the trending colors, maybe like a warm white. A lot of people snub their nose to that, but it looks crisp and clean and modern. Paint is probably one of the biggest things we would suggest.
Okay.
Cleaning your furnace, making sure your furnace filters are clean, and making sure that if you're on well and septic, we've had a water test, and making sure that there's no issues with the septic. For having it pumped prior to is always a good idea.
Okay.
That hasn't been done recently, but we have an extensive checklist, and I think that's really important to go through the checklist with your realtor in preparing. And sometimes it means too renting a storage unit.
Okay.
The way we live and the way people want to see our house when we sell can be completely different. So there's a long series of things that we would suggest, and Brandon may want to add some things to that.
Yeah, I think you covered most of it, but basically making sure that you have a team around you of professionals, whether that's a realtor, lawyer, mortgage broker, people that you like and you trust, and that are going to give you good advice, and ultimately make sure that they guide you through doing the right steps for preparing your property for sale, to make sure that it's going to get mass exposure to the most amount of people possible, to make sure that you leave no money, get as much money in your pocket at the end of the day to help you with wherever you're going.
I like that. I like the idea of the rental unit, because there's stuff in your house that you don't necessarily want buyers to see, because it like clutters your perspective.
It really does.
How you can see yourself in the house too, right? So
depersonalizing and just one little piece to add to that. Sometimes, if you have a roof that needs to be replaced and you don't have the monies to do that, I often like to see you have a quote on the things that need to be done, because let's say, for example, the roof is going to cost $8,000 to replace. A buyer may say, well, that's going to cost me $15,000.
Yeah.
We have this quote from a really reputable roofer. So there's lots. I mean, we could speak an hour to that, but definitely make sure you have the person that you work with, that you trust to come in and give you lots of
Okay.
tips.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, can you talk to us about the current market and help us manage our expectations in terms of what we'll be seeing this year compared to the previous couple of years? With regards to the price of homes, and can you kind of differentiate what that looks like for people who are buying versus people who will be selling this year?
You want to start on that one?
Kind of a loaded question, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I can start with buyers. You know, as most people know, seeing a lot of the doom and gloom headlines in the news, there has been some big changes. You know, I think there's a lot of positive in it all too that news headlines don't tend to touch on. Like we were seeing some unsustainable real estate growth, and I think long term that's not really good for anybody. So we have seen prices come down quite a bit as interest rates have gone up. You know, one thing to speak a little bit to the market is, you know, although prices have come down, when you look at the cost of a mortgage on like a monthly basis of your monthly expense, prices are lower, but usually with the increase in interest rates, your monthly expense actually really hasn't changed that much. The real positive in it is, you know, you need a smaller percentage towards your down payment. So even though you might pay a little extra interest over that 5-year term, considering you're putting down a lesser down payment, you will end up further ahead. So, you know, long term, there still is more demand than there is supply, but that demand has been curbed with an increase in interest rates. So there is it's a more opportunity for buyers because, you know, going back to last year, January, February, March, before rates started going up, there was this heavy competition.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that have kept prices from going down as much as some people may have expected was because there is still not a ton of inventory. So depending on what price point a buyer's in, there still is quite a bit of competition in the lower price points, not as much in the higher price points, but a lot of really big positives in the sense that you're not competing with 10, 15 people. And, you know, not a ton of inventory right now. We will see more coming to market, but you're able to get in and more often than not compete, again, depending on the price point, and you're able to get in conditions, financing, home inspection, the conditions you would want on a country property, like checking the well and the septic, and all of those are really big positives for buyers. So a lot of good things happening in it all.
Okay, that's good.
I think that's great. I don't know if I add anything to the buyer, and it's, you know, like Brandon said, the competition isn't as plentiful now. You're able to come in and be very hopeful that in a week you're able to purchase a property. The sellers aren't holding out for offers the way they had been last year. Last year with sellers, we had seen, and you know, during the pandemic, I shouldn't say just last year, we often seen, you know, list on a Wednesday, Thursday, offers on Monday, everybody lined up 10, 20 offers, no conditions. So he spoke to the buyer, I'll speak to the seller. You know, last year, January, February, March, the market was at its height, nothing like we'd ever seen in the history of organized real estate. And the good thing is a lot of people, as they're posted here for a long period of time, the market goes up and down all the way up. So one of the positives, you know, for any sellers, oh darn, I bought in that market. If and when you're posted, you'll see that, you know, the market went down up here and then now it's gone down, and you potentially losing some money where you're moving has also gone down. So for a seller, there was 0.6% that purchased in that time frame in Canada in the January, February, March. Right now, the expectation, I suppose, for sellers to let them know, to manage that expectation is we're not seeing the multiple offers like we had been, less slower price point, as Brandon had mentioned. And that's good for those sellers where they're being posted as well, right?
Yeah.
They don't have that heavy pressure on them. So don't have the expectation of last year, January, February, March prices. I think it's incredibly important as a seller to be pricing your home at fair market value.
Yeah.
You know, and I know it's hard for a seller. We're not here to get you, we're here to get you the best price possible. And often if you're overpricing that, you're chasing the market down. So you want to be mindful of that. We can go over of the percentage of homes that sell quickly, and usually that is, if you're pricing your house properly. If it's
Okay.
on the market, it can become, for a long period of time, it starts to become stigmatized.
Right.
So
That makes sense.
going over the market with your agent, getting a good plan in place, not expecting multiple offers. If that happens, that's a bonus. Pricing it right and really going over what the market, how it's changed. You can't really say, okay, bring me back and show me the comparables. My neighbor sold in January last year. We're not there. We're
Okay.
going to be looking at April onward. And especially we tend to try to find comps in the last 60 days that
Okay.
compare to yours. So it's really important to educate yourself. We all get personally attached to our homes.
Yeah.
So more often than not, we do think our homes are worth more than
Yeah.
what the market's bearing. And as agents, we do have to go to the tough spots
Yeah.
and talk about what is the market value, what's the expectation. And we give you feedback from all the showings. So,
Okay. That
don't
helps.
expect multiple offers, I suppose.
So this is something that's not just specific to our area either. Everything's kind of coming down across the board, across Canada then too. So if people are posting to another province, they can kind of expect to see that lower price on homes as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
For the most part, like sometimes you see some different activity. We're experts in the local market, not across Canada. However, being in the business and networking with a lot of other top realtors across the country, we do get some insight into what's happening in other places. Sometimes, what's happened in places like Alberta that are more oil dependent, for example, might differ than the rest of Canada. But typically, overall, the majority of provinces will follow a similar trend.
Okay, that's good to know. You never know, I don't know what
Yeah.
it's like.
Well, if you
across
post
province-
into
yeah.
Cold Lake, I suppose, I mean, they didn't have the big jumps like we did, or Ottawa. I
Yeah,
mean, Ottawa, Halifax, our area, Toronto, Vancouver.
yeah,
Those were some of the biggest increases. I mean, places like Saskatchewan didn't see as much
As
of an
big of an
increase. So,
increase.
and once again, that's having a chat about that. But rest assured, most likely, if you're selling, it went down here. Chances are wherever you're posted, Comox even,
Yeah.
crazy market, it's gone down there
Okay.
as well.
Okay, great. Okay, so when members are preparing to relocate here to 8-Wing, where should they start looking for properties? If they're
Yeah.
away somewhere in another province or something, where's a
Yeah.
good place to start?
So maybe I'll start with this one. So, that's a little customized to the individual person. So if I'm on the phone with a buyer and we first start talking about, do you want to live in a subdivision? Do you want to live rural? Are you
Right.
single? Are you married? Do you have children? Are they in competitive sports? Because if they're in competitive sports, maybe it's more Belleville or Trenton.
Yeah,
If your kids, are grown and gone and it's just you, maybe it's more of a Brighton.
right.
If you talk to 10 people, when you're posted in, sometimes by the time you're done a conversation with 10 people, there's nowhere to live.
Mhm.
Because, Trenton, you have the bridge. If you're in Belleville, taxes are higher. Brighton, you have the sun in your eyes,
Yeah.
So I really feel if you're in town, the main focus is making sure you're buying in a really good location. And you're buying a house that's going to appeal to a broad market.
Okay.
So, living in a property that's not on a really busy road or
Mhm.
next to a bunch of industrial, that the homes around you are very similar to what you're purchasing or better.
Okay,
And not buying in an area that's dilapidated homes,
Yeah.
so to speak. So, and if you're out of town, making sure that you're not too far from amenities, because that can become an objection issue. And well and septic is really important too, because we do have areas that maybe the water is not so plentiful,
right.
has salt in the water. That's important to perform all your conditions
Yeah,
to make sure that those things are
yeah,
good. So it depends it's customized to each individual, but your location is the most important thing of all.
okay. Sounds good.
I think I just have one thing to add, in terms of where to start looking for properties. A lot of people kind of joke or and I'm the same, real estate junkies. They like
Yeah.
watching what's happening. They're going on realtor.ca and a variety of other websites.
Yeah.
I think that's good. It seems good too, because ultimately as a buyer and a seller to be successful, and what our jobs are more of guides than salespeople are to inform people, educate them. So they have the ability to make informed decisions that are within their best interests, right? And a lot of buyers, or sellers that are gonna be buying, will start looking at realtor.ca in a specific area that maybe they're posted to get familiar with what prices are like. The one thing I would suggest is make sure, like, it's important to have a conversation with a realtor who's doing that every single day, because sometimes we like to say the proof is in the solds. Sometimes people will look at what things are listed for and what the ultimate sale price is going to be is very different. Some people underprice, some people way overprice. So talking to a realtor who has access to the actual sale prices is important too. And when you're looking, a lot of buyers will start looking before they're ready. By being ready, I mean pre-approved and with their house sold wherever they're moving from. Because sometimes people will start looking at houses right away, and until which is good to get educated, but until you're in a position where you actually can buy, then sometimes you're seeing places that you like and you can't really do much about it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
One last piece I think is really important. I forgot, when you are a family with young children, schools, that's really important where you're going to look, because, you know, if you want to go to a certain Catholic school or public school or French school, we do have a great map that we can provide. So people would say, okay, if this is the school I want to be at, then it's going to limit your selection. But most good schools have really good areas to purchase. So I think that's been a big thing for us. People ask us
that's a good point, because sometimes that can be like an afterthought, you know. If you can kind of like figure out where you want them, if they are going to a specific school, then you can kind of plan around the area that you're going to look at. Okay. Okay, so we kind of talked about this already, but I just want to see if you have any other information about rural properties. So, you know, the surrounding areas around Trenton, Belleville, there's a lot of rural properties. What are some considerations people need to be aware of when thinking about purchasing rural properties? We talked about septic, you talked about the well. What
Close
else?
to amenities. You know, over the years, I've had many times where people are very interested in rural, and they end up being so far away that it becomes an objection when they sell, because people don't find they're near a grocery store or near a hospital or the schools. Or I think even like being in an area, if your kids are really social, then is that rural location going to be what you're looking for? So I think septic, amenities. What else would you add to that, Mary?
Yeah, I think, you know, some people want to be off the beaten path, but one thing to consider is, you know, you always want to rock a fine line, because you never want to have something that you have great quality, because there's quality of life and resale value to consider. You never want something with a really awesome quality of life. Like if you're a hermit, wants to be out off the beaten path. So, you know, you may have a great quality life, but maybe the resale value won't be there. But then again, you don't want to be, as your hermit, being in town and have no quality life. So it's kind of finding the balance between those two things.
For sure.
And then certainly, you know, again, it's not as competitive as a market. So buyers are able to fit in conditions more often than not now. And you're always able to put in conditions, even if you are competing, you might just have a less competitive offer, may not get it. But, you know, to have a septic inspection as a condition and a well test as a condition. Well is always two things. It's quality of water and quantity of water.
Okay.
So get your septic inspected if you're going to buy rural, and get the well tested on quality and quantity.
Okay.
And maintenance. That's another thing. Like my husband and I always, you have in your head what you think you want. And I mean, even as a realtor, we bought a property with quite a bit of land. And then we were there, we built it, and we were there, I think 5 months. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
This is what I thought I wanted. We'd never had it before. And then we actually went for a walk one night. And I think I was the one that finally said, this is not for me. He said, me either. Like you spend your Saturdays doing a lot of maintenance, like mowing the lawn and big long driveways, shoveling driveways. So, and then the other thing, rule is the road maintained in the winter time, like to get you to and from work and school? And
that's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
So
you don't think about that.
No.
Like I kind of live in a rural area and we're right off of a main road. So it's plowed pretty frequently, but some of the other streets that offshoot, I mean, the plow doesn't see them for a while. So that's a really good consideration.
Yeah, and if you're here short term, really, like Brandon was saying, you know, you don't want to like, oh, I love my house and I'll sell it I won't sell it for months, or I hate my house and I'll sell it in a day. You need the happy medium, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes when we have clients come in, they've said, I want to change it up, I want rural. And it's like going on a family vacation, you know, remember us going to Newfoundland one time, we're thinking, this is going to be amazing, we're going to look at all these rocks and it's wonderful and the kids are going to love it, and they're whining and complaining like when they're 5, 6 years old, they're so bored. And I think a rural property could be like that sometimes. It happened for me.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
unless you're diehard, you grew up on it, you have to have it. For those people who've lived in town in a subdivision, let's have really good conversation around your rural purchase before it happens.
Right. Okay. I like that.
One more souvenir shop.
Not so much fun, right? Okay, so this is kind of a little bit different here, but I wanted to see if you could kind of explain what co-ownership means and just provide some information about how we can educate ourselves if this is a direction that we think might work for us, or us, and like we're considering a person to maybe go into co-ownership with.
So with co-ownership, it's a fairly new concept for folks. I mean, in 23 years, it's only been the last maybe year and a half that it's been coming up. There's pros and cons to co-ownership. And then the most important piece would be having a really good lawyer to talk to about examples of what's our exit strategy? What if you get posted before I do?
Yeah.
You know, what about a living arrangements? You really have to sit down and define that on paper, because not all personalities are going to jive, right? But you can make it work. Where there's a will, there's a way. Okay. The positive of co-ownership is you have potentially 2 people that come in and they get qualified at $250, $275 each. That is a real grind to try to find a property that's going to work, that's going to maintain its value. And ultimately you want the quality of life and build equity. So the positive is if you can come up with 20% down, you avoid mortgage insurance.
Right.
You know, it's a good idea to set up a joint account where you have, say, 3 months payments in there so that you have a joint account you're drawing money from.
Yeah.
The positive, if you're both going to build equity, you have the pride of saying that you own a property, as opposed to renting and giving all your money away.
Yeah.
So I think that it's, you know, some people are nervous about it, right? Because it's new and we haven't really gone down that path. So there tends to be people who shy away from it, but being open-minded to it and having the right team of people working with you, a lawyer and your realtor and your banker that are going to give you all the pros and cons, so that when you enter into this sort of agreement, it's going to work out. And I think you really need to get all those questions answered. But I'm really for it. I mean, if this was one of my boys long before they owned properties, if this was something that they weren't going to be able to own for a long time, they had to continue renting, I would have really encouraged them to get into a co-ownership with rules and how to manage expectation of if somebody's posted before the first one, what does that look like? How do we deal with that? And if you can hit all the objections with a good lawyer, it'll be all on paper. So there's not going to be any confrontation with your exit strategy.
It's like preparation, you know, getting all the information you need before you go into something is the key to everything that we're talking about. So, okay, when members are discussing pre-approvals for mortgages, is it possible to get fully approved? And does this make a difference when it comes to purchasing or making a deal?
Do you want to go on that one?
Yeah, so technically, like, I don't know, a pre-approval, sometimes people could say it's not really worth the paper it's written on. That's for a variety of reasons. Is first of all, not everybody's super accurate with their information up front. Yeah. And I actually have my mortgage license in university, and we used to joke and call them dirt sandwiches. So that's one thing. So I'll always make sure as a buyer, when you're getting a pre-approval, be accurate, because if you're not, the banks, like, they know what they're doing. They're going to get to the bottom of it later on, and it would only hurt you. So always just give all the details. Don't hold anything back. Next thing would be getting like a full approval. You can always be very accurate with your information, but what what buyers are up against is, when they go to, when they have a live deal, for example, so let's say a buyer goes in and they put in, no financing condition because it's a hot market, there's multiple offers. The bank, even if they gave all the accurate information, the bank oftentimes, depending, always may need to, they may ask for an appraisal. And if somebody paid 500 for a house and the house is only appraised at, let's say, $480,000, if that buyer may need to come up with that additional 20,000 because the bank will only lend them on 480,000. So yes, you can get fully approved. However, there may be an appraisal and there are things to, you want to make sure that you put in a financing condition if possible. If not, you want to take that specific property and talk to your realtor and talk to your banker and kind of work as a team to figure out, because it is very specific to each situation. So you can definitely put yourself in a really good position in that regard, but there's it's kind of case by case specific.
And would this be when you have like a specific property in mind? Like this isn't just like when you're searching for properties, you can't get fully approved just when you're looking, right? You need to have a specific property in mind.
So if I can speak to that a little bit, when you get even, let's say, for example, today I said, I'm going to get approved or pre-approved. Approved, pre-approved's like, hey, John, I make $50,000 a year. I owe 25 and I just have one credit card. And I may be as honest as the day is long, but I'm busy heading out to somewhere. And then we realize, oh, she don't make 50, she makes 40. But in my head, say, oh, darn, I'm getting a raise next month. It's popping me up to 50. And that's going to put the ratios out of line. And I owe 25,000 in debt. Darn, I forgot about that Sears credit card. Well, there's no Sears anymore, but that MasterCard, I still owe $4,000. So that pre-approval, you just submitted an offer, you sent it over to John. He's going on based on 50,000 a year income and 25,000 debt. You were being honest, but you forgot about, oh, it's 50 next month, right? So that pre-approval now, he comes back, like, look, your debt ratios are at a line, you don't qualify.
Right.
Approval, I call John, he says, well, send me over your T4. And then he'll see, oh, you only make 40. Then you have discussion. 50 is as of next month. But you know, going into it, that might be an issue. You said you owe 25, but there's an extra 5. You don't qualify for 500,000, you qualify for 3. Speaking to Brandon's point, yes, you're right. Maybe by the time the live deal gets there, you were approved based on sending all your details over. But now we just had another 0.25% interest rate. Oh, it threw you off. Oh, your wife lost her job. You don't make as much as that anymore. Oh, you just bought a truck before you put in an offer. Oh, the house doesn't appraise. So we do as much as we can with the approval. I'm a big fan calling saying, I want to be approved and being detailed, sending all your info, because banks will say, and you know this yourself, you've been through it, where you give them all this information. Then by the time the live deal comes and they send you over all their T4s and you pull the credit check, it didn't work out, right? So it's only as good as, depending on what the market's doing, the interest rates. And if you go, one big tip is don't go out and buy a bunch of new things after you've bought a house, because that throws things off too. So there's never 100% guarantee with an actual approval, but it can get you further ahead than just getting a pre-approval.
If I may, like, just add that, you know, if you think about it from a bank's perspective, what a mortgage is it's a loan, and they want to make sure that they have their collateral, the collateral being the house. So when they're going to go, hey, I'm going to give you a $400,000 mortgage, I'm going to give you a $400,000 loan secured, the bank's security is by that property. They want to know what the property is like and what condition it's in. Otherwise, like, is it worth, is there $400,000 loan, the bank's investment, is it safe based on the property they're giving you that money on? So you can do all these things beforehand, but at the end of the day, there kind of needs to be a property in play for the bank to be able to do their due diligence and say, okay, yeah, we're good.
We've had that, you know, over the years. I mean, we had one recently this year. We can't really speak too much to it because of the privacy, but I have one a few years ago that they did an actual pre-approval, or not a pre-approval, an approval. And then in the offer, there was talks of a couple little issues, and they went out to appraise it, and they didn't like the house, you know. So if they don't like the house you're buying, maybe, you know, if there's issues, I don't know, knob and tube, or they discovered
Right.
they weren't really pleased with certain, like maybe something with the foundation. Not
Okay.
that we would sell someone with an issue, you know, a foundation issue, but sometimes a buyer, in this case, they knew there were some issues with the foundation and it was full disclosure. They were very handy to be able to, you know, fix it. The bank's like, no, I'm
No.
shutting this down. As good as that person was, they just didn't like that house. So then you maybe sometimes then have to turn to a B lender option, but that's for a different story.
Okay,
So,
okay, good to know. Okay, so we're gonna kind of switch directions here a little bit. So in the BGRS portal, there's a list of third-party service providers there for people to access when they're moving to whatever location they're going to. So I just kind of wanted to see if you can give us some tips on how members can ensure they're choosing local professionals who are experienced with military moves specifically, and how can they make sure that they're going to keep their best interests in hand when they're handling their situation. Like, what are some key questions
yeah.
and things that they can talk about with these professionals before they decide on who they're going to go with?
One thing would be referral. So that's a huge thing, and referral doesn't always work out.
Yeah,
You know, you could talk to one person that you barely know that you've just met at work and they recommend somebody, and maybe that person's never owned a house. And so more often than not, if you've got some reliable contacts within your network of folks you're working with, you can talk to 2 or 3 people to get a few recommendations, then
yeah,
speak with them. How long have you been a realtor? Are you a full-time realtor?
Yeah.
You know, do you have another job that you're doing 40 hours a week, right? Because that's important. And then do
Yeah.
you have any not recommendations, but referrals? Can you give me a few names? of
right.
folks
Like
that
a
you-
reference.
A reference.
Yeah,
I
okay,
had
yeah.
a brain fart there. for a
Oh, I have
second.
them all the time, don't worry.
And I think with that in mind, if you are getting a really good referral and you're asking
Yeah.
them the right questions, and are you going to give me recommendations of who else I could deal with? Do you know some of the people who are on the BGRS list? Because,
Right,
you know, with us, for example, when we're recommended to someone, it's really important to us that we're looking after them from A to Z, and
Yeah.
we give them to-do lists. And we know who in the community they should be working with that are honest and ethical and that aren't
Yeah.
going to drop the ball. So I really do feel that if you're getting a great realtor
Mhm.
and asking them, do you work? I know they're on the list. Some people can be on the list, but you know, do you deal with a lot of military? So
Yeah,
we can do this with our eyes closed. You know, we have lists of who we work with and who's above and beyond. And I think if you work with that right realtor, they're going to give you the right bankers and
Yeah.
insurance companies and well and septic and
Yeah.
everything you need to bring that transaction together as a whole. You know, and I've often, you know, let's jump on a Zoom call and just see if we're the right fit. You're making the
right,
biggest decision of your life, and the most important thing, you don't have to be best friends with your realtor.
Yeah.
But you want a realtor who's going to be like, I'm very forward.
Mhm.
I could be really candid, and I don't, it's not always in the beginning like some people like, whoa, and then they're like, I really appreciate that, because
Yeah.
let's cut through this and really talk about that agent, have that conversation and see whether or not you have a connection, and if they're going to have your best interests at heart. And based on referrals, I think that is always going to be really successful.
okay,
Do you
okay,
have anything?
So I think good old fashioned word of mouth, you can look at Google reviews and, you
that's
know,
good.
if you're going to a realtor, oftentimes a realtor ends up being like a quarterback because they've dealt with professionals, whether it's a lawyer, banker, insurance, broker, inspectors,
yeah,
dozens, if not hundreds of times. So they know through experience who's good, who's not good.
yeah,
And, you know, sometimes if you go to your coworker, you know, if they've only dealt with that, you know, their strategic alliances, those people that I just mentioned only once,
yeah,
they might not have an accurate view of, you know, who's
True.
good and who's not.
okay,
And it's kind of like, I don't know, when someone goes to someone for advice like this, it's like, if you went to a hairdresser with a haircut you really didn't like, would you ask them for advice on how to cut your hair?
nope,
Or how to, you know, probably not.
And your MFRC folks, of course, right?
yeah,
We're in a small community, and you really get to know
yeah,
who's there for your best interest. And I think it's really important to work with someone that's not looking out for their own best interests, a
Yeah.
commission check. And if I may, not every realtor would be pleased with me saying this, but work with a local.
Yeah.
Don't come from Ottawa or Barrie or even Kingston with your realtor that you love and trust there,
Yeah.
because they don't know all the ins and outs, pros and cons and market values of a property here. I will not go to Kingston. I will not go to Toronto or Barrie, these
Yeah.
areas. We like to be very specific, know our location and educate the client.
That makes sense,
yeah.
actually. Yeah, that's a really good tip too, because, you know, maybe even whoever they typically trust in their own area could hook them up with someone that's more local to the area.
Mhm.
So I like that. I like that idea. Okay. Okay, so house hunting trips. I just want to talk about this quick because when people come on their house hunting trips, it's like a whirlwind and it's stressful and there's a lot to get done. So I kind of want to know from your guys' perspective, how can members best prepare themselves to ensure that they get the most out of their house hunting trip and be successful with their purchase in the end, at the end of it all?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. When you're coming on your house hunting trip, lots of conversations with your realtor. When I'm talking to you and you're saying to me, Lorraine, we're coming, I have 2 young children. It's really important to me to be in a safe neighborhood.
Mhm.
And it's important I'm close to the base. And I must have, because we talk about showstoppers. Showstopper means if it has this, don't even show
It's
it to
like
me.
not worth it.
So I
Okay.
get very detailed notes. It's like, all right, Cheryl wants 4 bedrooms, right? Because she has Russell and Thomas, her and her husband. And then she wants to be in town. It's important to her that her children have little kids in the neighborhood to play with. And I will not buy a house that has a partial basement. So, all right, I have all these notes. And then when we're talking, I want you to look at what's coming up on MLS. We
Yeah.
can go over the solds, we can go over the pros and cons of neighborhoods. Then close to house hunting time, some buyers will say, it's more important to them to say, I want to see 40 houses. That's something I always find so frustrating. It's like 40 houses. All right, let's talk about that. There's 40 on your list. 25 of them have partial basements on busy roads. But you just told me you want a house with a full basement on a non-busy road.
Mhm.
It's not important of how many houses you see. What's important is what houses will be good resale, safe neighborhood, because it's really important to you to have Thomas and Russell
Yeah,
on a really safe street with a full basement because you have family come all the time.
yeah,
So I really do like to go to those tough spots and say, you know, all due respect, I'll show them to you, but, you know, 15 of them don't suit the needs of what you're looking for. And 5 of them are really busy roads that when you go to sell it, we're going to have a hard time if it's in a buyer's market to get people in because they object to the street.
yeah,
So if we have someone's objecting to the street you live on, even if you've made that perfect little castle, the number one thing is location. So coming on a house hunting trip is really getting into those candid conversations because you're a team with your realtor
yeah,
and you need them to coach you so that we're not wasting our time looking at maybe 15, 20 houses that will never suit your needs.
yeah.
It's sticking with what suits your needs.
Okay.
And making sure it's a good location, getting your approval, pre-booking a hotel, wearing slip-on shoes because it's easy in and out of houses, going over how much do I need as a deposit, so we've got the right deposit.
Right.
Your realtor helping you pre-book like home inspection, well, septic, all those things.
So it's all
that
lined up to
it's
go.
all lined
Okay.
up to go. Would you, anything to add to that?
Yeah, like I think, yeah, just
Did I do a good job?
You did.
get your team fired, like get everything going. Like with your, you know, when you're dealing with a banker, a realtor, and then home inspectors, lawyers, things like that. Home inspector and lawyer, they don't need to come at the start of looking, but basically, you know, work with your professionals as a team. And if you know, you don't like something, speak up. If you know, and just kind of nourish that team aspect, because
Right.
when people communicate well, they have open lines of communication. Ultimately, the better chances of a buyer finding or being
Right.
successful.
I guess with your team too, if your realtor knows you're coming for your house hunting trip, they can kind of help you to make sure that those other team members are lined up and ready to go for that week. Like they know you're going to be here, so your lawyer can be prepared that they're going to be receiving some information and make sure they have things lined up as well.
And I think, help us help you,
Yeah,
not say, okay, I'm coming next week. I don't really know what I want. And I've never looked at what's in the area. Because if you help us help you by being organized
yeah,
and having all of this stuff in place that we're coaching you on,
right.
as well as looking at what's there and really thinking about your wants.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't, sometimes what we end up buying may be a little different, especially if you're a first time buyer.
Yeah.
But if you've had experience, I find if we really talk about what you want, it goes really smooth, you know, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of leftover time to check out the county and go see things, maybe
that's
visit
kind of nice. So
family.
you
And
kind of get to know the area a
Yeah.
little bit while you're here.
we do a lot, we do have a lot of to-do lists, and we look after sending things to bankers and everybody. And
Yeah,
we really like to have a lot of control over that, so you don't drop any balls.
yeah,
Like, have you called the insurance company? No? Okay, here's a few people.
okay,
We'll send this to your banker. We'll do this, that. We do a lot of
Okay.
behind the scene things to help folks,
right,
so they're not missing anything.
They
right.
don't have to think too much.
Yeah,
Hopefully
that
it's
helps a lot.
They find something they like really quick and can
Yeah.
collect their per diem and
Yeah.
go have a few days of vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy it a little bit. So one of the main things from what I just heard is make sure you know what your wants are. Like you're clear about that so that you're not wasting your time seeing properties that really aren't gonna line up for you in the end anyway.
Yeah,
So,
because
be clear
sometimes
about that.
sometimes we can look at the, like, 6 houses that I know they're the best on the market, best resale, gonna fit the quality of life, gonna fit the lifestyle. And we then take 2 more days of looking at 25 houses that will not work because it only has 2 bedrooms and it doesn't have 4. It's got a partial basement, not a pool. And it's on a really busy road with a bar in behind you. And we've
Yeah.
lined them up, and then it's like, but we've already seen 6 incredible places. Not that I'm trying to reduce my workload.
Yeah,
It's just what's going to work for you. And then sometimes by going out and seeing things that are in terrible locations that will be a risk on resale, when we get back to those 6, like, oh, you're right,
Yeah.
those 6 do work. Let's have a second look at these 2. Maybe then they're already gone.
right.
They all have
Okay.
a certain amount of bandwidth and it's using it, efficiently, really.
Right. Okay, that makes total sense. Okay. So based on the market and the affordability of homes right now, I know it's come down a lot compared to previous years. Do you think it's still a good idea for people to maybe consider renting if they're not seeing things in their price range, like instead of going above and beyond what they're comfortable with in buying something, is it a good idea to at least consider?
It depends on if you were qualified for amount, and we are not suggesting the homes that are in your range because they can be
Yeah.
very difficult resale or not fit your quality of life. I do think it's important at that point to look at a short-term rental situation. However, I'm a big believer in buying a house. My son Ryan, who's a realtor with us, who was in the military for
Yeah.
9 years, and his first posting was Esquimalt. I think Ryan was 20 years old. And I went on his house hunting trip with
Yeah.
him, and he bought a condo. My husband and I said, it's a really good idea to own. And a year after, I got a call, it's like, Mom, I can't believe you talked me into buying a property. He was upset with me. I'm like, Ryan, the price have come down some, you're still there.
Yeah.
Like, you need to chill out. And by the time he left, long story short, he made 108,000.
Wow.
That was above and beyond what he had paid down.
Yeah.
Sold it for. Then he got posted here to Trenton.
Yeah.
And he had all of that equity to make a purchase. So
Right. Yeah.
if we had a crystal ball, we'd be really wealthy.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately the real estate market goes up and down all the way up. I know there's a lot of military coming in short term, but there's also a program in place where entitlements, you can claim up to
Yeah.
30,000. Yes, there's taxes on some, and it's got to be entitled. If you sold it for less, ultimately, Brandon always says 100%. If you're renting, 100% of your money is gone. So
That's true. At least
100%.
this way you're investing in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because you're building equity for yourself. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 100% interest rate. I mean, nobody can fully predict the market. You can get good ideas of what's happening based on trends and
Yeah.
doing it every day, listening to some of the country's leading economists, following the stats. However, nobody short-term can accurately predict. Like you said, real estate goes up and down all the way up. So when you think long-term, you'll always, in my opinion, end up further ahead. As long
Okay.
as you buy in a good location, good condition,
Yeah,
Okay.
if someone's, long-term is a tough one because a lot of military only here 2-3 years, so they don't always have the ability to keep long-term. So
Yeah,
they have to look in the short term.
yeah,
And to make it less risk averse, if you're buying in a good location, a house that appeals to a broad market and is going to be a good resale, whether we're in a balanced market or a seller's market or a buyer's market, then it's a good time to buy.
okay,
And if you're here for several years, you're paying down, right, on that. So
yeah,
I think sometimes we gotta look at each individual situation. I know sometimes people coming out of places like Cold Lake,
yeah,
it can be very gun shy. They can say, look, I lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
We know people who lost a lot of money. But where we're located, you also got to look at, we're Canada's largest Air Force base. We're close to Toronto. Immigration's not slowing down. Where we are on the 401 corridor, it's a very safe place. So if we look at what the economists are saying, that doesn't apply to everywhere always, because if you look at where we are,
right,
military will always be coming in buying from military. And in my 23 years here, aside from, our pandemic situation,
yeah,
it's always been a very safe bet to own property.
okay,
We kind of debate about it too, which I think is good.
yeah,
You see different sides. There is some unfortunate situations where people do end up losing money and they're not in a position to go to the next posting
right,
and be able to have the equity they need to be able to afford based on market values in that market. I got a lot of empathy because that's, a tough position I wouldn't wish upon anyone.
yeah,
But when we look at I think what a lot of people would have a hard time believing, but is true. If you look at the history of values since Canada became a country, on average, every 10 years, the real estate market typically doubles. Now that could be in 7 years, it could be in 15 years. So even if market or prices go down, let's hope that if you have to sell low, that wherever you're going, you end up buying low too. And
maybe it'll come back up.
maybe. And to me, I think there's risk if you rent forever because you're scared that prices will go down. The risk in that is that you pay 100% interest, essentially just paying your rent payment, and you won't build equity to get ahead that way.
Yeah,
And if you buy, there's risk short term that you might lose some money and maybe not have enough equity going to the place you're posted to.
right,
To me, and I think there's less risk in being a homeowner as long as you plan on staying in the market.
yeah,
But there is, situational things where things can go up and down.
okay. Good information. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so in closing, I guess, do you have any other information that you think would be important for military members and families to consider when they're getting ready to sell or getting ready to buy?
Yeah, I think talking to MFRC, right,
Yep.
to get referrals. Also Denise over at CISUP,
Yep.
a really good person to talk to.
Fantastic.
If you
Yeah.
are wanting to live in the PMQs as opposed to renting, is getting names on lists early.
Yeah,
And coming in with knowing that there is that 2 year to buy, not taking the money that's offered to you and then later buying and then having all the expenses out of your pocket.
yeah,
Having someone work with you if you're not great at spending to be able to put the money aside for your down payment.
yeah,
Working with a mortgage professional that's going to help you with that. Denise, assists up her and her group of people. Sorry, Denise is the only one
yeah.
name that I know. And getting a real estate agent that's going to have your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
Because it's the biggest purchase of your life. And
Yeah,
you want to make sure that your quality of life is good while you're here, and your home is you spend a lot of time there. You want to
Yeah.
feel safe and comfortable and have good neighbors and all
Yeah,
those
you're
warm
completely
fuzzies
right.
that come with being a homeowner.
yeah, you do. Work on building your team, getting that team together and researching that before you make any, go into it. Anyway, okay. So thank you both so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
This has been really great. I'm just going to check the Facebook comments and see if we have any